Welcome back. Instant analysis after Wednesday practice. USC is facing Iowa in the Coliseum. 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. I'm Riley Sager. He's Connor Morrissette. Connor, how you doing? And what do you got for us?
Doing well, Riley. Great to be with you, as always, here on Wednesday. Chris and I, we talked yesterday about the four guys. We were looking to see what their injury status was, try to get as much as we can. That was Tunick Hines, that was King Miller, Big General Reed, Marcellus Williams. Pretty good news on all those guys. Tunick Hines out there again. He looks good. Marcellus Williams, we didn't see him come out in pads yesterday, but we saw him leave in pads today. He did come out in pads, so that is a good sign. Big General Reed was moving much better than he was yesterday. Came out in pads both days. I don't know for sure if Reed will play, but I think the other guys will, which is great. The one thing today, as always, it's Wednesday, so if you've been watching these all year, you know that Jakeem Stewart hasn't been practicing on Wednesday, and that, again, happened, but he hasn't missed any games, so I don't anticipate him missing the Iowa game. I think he'll be out there. I just did my PFF grades, the story on our site for the Northwestern game, and Stewart was the number 2 guy on defense for USC behind Carlos Nicholson, so he's continuing to play really well despite having this nagging injury. Some good injury but just a good injury situation for USC right now.
Also, if you've been watching the season, then you know Wednesday we talked to the defense. So we talked to a couple of guys on defense, and then Coach Lynn afterward, which usually is before. It'll switch up today, but biggest takeaway?
Well, Lynn, I thought he answered a couple of interesting questions. The first thing I wanted to know, the last 3 games, USC, they've given up they've given up a touchdown to the opposing offense on the first drive every game. So Notre Dame, Nebraska, and then Northwestern. And I asked Lynn, is there anything you can point to as to why that's been happening? And he just talked about how it comes down to execution, and that's been why they haven't done it. He said, yes, do I want some of the calls back? But we haven't executed. And when USC has adjusted in the second half and just executed better, I mean, the last couple of weeks, they've only allowed 3 points in the second half. So when he talks about needing to execute better at the start, I believe him, because their defense is where they stink at the beginning and then they stink the whole way. It's reassuring that USC is getting better in those second halves, and that gives me confidence that they should be able to turn these slow starts around, so we'll have to see on that. Lynn also talked about how he compared USC's playoff push to the NFL, where he used to coach before he was at UCLA as the defensive coordinator. This is the first time Lynn, as a DC, is coaching for a potential playoff team in November. UCLA wasn't in this position his first year. USC wasn't last year. So he said that's exciting. It reminds him of the NFL. I thought that was an interesting comment. And duplicating Mark Gronowski, the Iowa quarterback, who is a great running threat, 12 rushing touchdowns on the year. That's been challenging. I tried to get him to say, who's the scout team quarterback? Who's been working his mark? He said, I can't divulge that information, but they feel prepared. I think it's been multiple guys working at that spot. Gronowski, he's a capable passer. He set a bunch of records at the FCS level, but what's really worked for Iowa this year is his ability to run. He had a great running touchdown in the fourth quarter against Oregon last week, so USC knows that's a big emphasis, and we'll see how they do Saturday against the guy who can hurt them with their legs.
Yeah, like you said, Connor, you can't match it exactly. You can never replicate someone else's game, but he is confident about that. He said whatever guys they're having out there, he's trusting that they're going to get it done.
He is, and why wouldn't he after the last 2 second halves for USC? Luke Altmaier hurt USC a little bit with his legs, but nothing crazy. I don't think USC, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think through it, has played a quarterback like this. Like Stone isn't really a runner. Raiola wasn't really a runner. He tried a couple times. Carr is a runner a little bit, but didn't really do too much. The Notre Dame quarterback, that was all the running back. So it's a unique challenge. It's something new, but it's funny that for the 3rd straight week here, it's not a very good passing attack for USC. And just on paper, with USC's star-studded passing attack, with Jade Mayava returning to form, Mekhi Lemon being healthy, Jacoby Lane looking really good last week, the tight ends, King Miller out of the backfield can catch some passes too. It's an offense that USC has confidence in with Lincoln Riley, and they should outscore Iowa, I think, but we'll see what the weather holds, I guess.
Yeah, he said those first drives in those games, it comes down to execution, but he also said that's what has been going well when the defense is doing well. It's because of execution, and usually the guys say something like communication. That's what they've been focusing on, and that's always a consistent element of the game, but he just said they were able to execute, and they're executing faster. He talked about Desmond Stevens. You know, if he is doing the wrong thing or like making the wrong call. At least he's doing it faster, and then he can recognize it and then make adjustments.
I thought Desmond Stevens, the only indecisive play I noticed from him was on the first series when USC was in man coverage and Northwestern ran that pass to the running back, Kumalafe, where everyone was going one way. Kumalafe sneaked out of the backfield, went the other way. Stevens, for a second, looked like, oh, I know that's my guy, but am I doing the right thing? And then it ended up being a gain of 18, and they scored a touchdown on that drive. But after that was it. And that's 2 weeks in a row now where Desmond Stevens has looked really good. He was great against the run against Northwestern. Pro Football Focus gave him the highest rushing defense grade of the season for him. The fact that he's put 2 good weeks together is significant to me, because I do think when you're a young player, like, progress isn't always linear, and some weeks you're going to be high, some weeks you're going to be low. But the last 3 games for him, Notre Dame wasn't particularly good, but he's bounced back with 2 really good performances, which is huge. I was expecting maybe some more inconsistency, but if he can play like this the rest of the year, that's a huge boost for USC. They need him to be playing well.
Yeah, and Lynn credited him with taking advantage of that second bye week. He said it was a great week of practice, and practice isn't always indicative of how the game is going to go, but he said he really took advantage of that, and it's been showing in the games.
It has, and we talked to Desmond Stevens today. I asked him what's been the difference, and he said just the buy-in. We had that tough Notre Dame game, and we've really bought in the last couple weeks. That's been key, and I just think up and down the roster, that's such a big part of this year, why USC's in the position to potentially do something special this season. The buy-in of this group really stands out. I talked about it on the podcast today a little bit, where no one's entering the transfer portal halfway through the season. We haven't heard about anyone putting up a stink and wanting to redshirt because they're not happy with their usage. You see Sam Heward coming in and faking the punt, and everyone's so happy for him, and Kalen Miller coming in and doing whatever it takes to win and really being solid when his number's been called. He even played fullback the other day. I give Coach Lincoln Riley a lot of credit, and the staff a lot of credit, just for the fact that this team is so bought in, where at this point last year there were a lot of question marks about that. The year before, the same way. I think they've learned from their mistakes. The fact that the wide receivers are rotating less is huge compared to last season. Get Mekhi Lemon out there as much as you can, Jacoby Lane, and then whoever else is available can fill out the rest of that. They've learned, and it's really come together nicely for them here. If they can win out, we all know what's next for them, the playoff. That would be great.
Well, a big part of that is trust, which the guys have been talking about. Steven said that today in his interview, that when you trust the coaches, you're going to automatically trust who they choose to put on the field, and then you're going to trust the guy that's next to you. Jade Avasiri said that after Friday's game. That was a big thing. Not ideal start defense-wise to the Northwestern game, and he said, but the guys, you just poured in the trust, everybody knew the assignment, and they executed.
And then how about the trust in Braylon Conley coming in when Marcellus Williams got hurt? He, for the most part, I thought played really well. He had the one pass interference, and then he allowed a reception down the field on a third down play. But remember, he made the tackle on that play, or else it would have been a touchdown, and then USC held Northwestern to a field goal. So that's such a key part of being a defensive back. You're going to make mistakes. It's not going to be perfect. And Conley, who hadn't played in like 4 weeks before that, comes in off the bench and blew up a couple run plays. Another example of what you're talking about, the trust in the teammates, the trust in what the coaching staff is telling guys. It's not an easy spot to be in when you play a lot against Illinois. It doesn't go well, and then for the next 3 games, you don't see any defensive action at all. To stay ready, to have that mindset, like, if my number's called, I'm going to go in and make a difference. Conley, he was a guy we really noticed for good reasons against Northwestern with a couple of those tackles for losses, just playing with an edge, and he'll learn from some of those mistakes. But I think that's another really good example of the trust, the buy-in, the chemistry, just being in a really good place where you go back to 2023, the defensive backs at USC, you didn't know what you were going to get when someone went down with an injury. You didn't know what you were going to get from some of the starters sometimes. So the guys are getting coached much better, and I thought it was another feather in the cap of the defensive staff. You can have Braylon Conley come in when he's had an up-and-down year to this point, but he looked really good against Northwestern for the most part, and that's something you can build on.
Well, that TFL for 4 yards, was that the play immediately after the pass interference call?
I think so, Riley. Great point. Yeah, so you got to have a short memory.
Yeah, I just remember watching that play from the press box, and, of course, no one wants a PI call, and then he just, short-term memory loss, forget it, next play mentality. I asked him, is that something that you've just always had, or it comes with the game? And he said definitely when he was younger, you have to get used to that, not getting too bogged down in your mistakes, coming back to them after the game, of course, but when you're on the field, it's the next play that matters the most.
Absolutely. He also talked about Conley being even-keeled, which is another key attribute It's one thing to say a lot of these things in the interviews, but the games tell the whole story, and a lot of these guys have backed up what we've heard them talk about, where these younger players like Conley, like Desmond Stevens, like Jaden Walker, like Marcellus Williams, it's not always going to be perfect, but they all have a really good mindset. Lincoln Riley's talked a lot this week about the championship culture that the coaching staff has, with him going to multiple playoffs along with Dennis Simmons and Rob Ryan winning a Super Bowl, Sean Nua playing in a Super Bowl and winning, Eric Henderson winning a Super Bowl as a coach. And the fact that that staff has that behind them and they're able to teach some of these guys who are new to what's going on this year at USC right now with a chance to make the playoff, that's been helpful. And I think that kind of speaks to the young players having success too, where you just have to have that professional mindset, and a lot of those guys do.
Yeah. Anything from DeCarlos Nicholson?
Yes. So I asked him what's led to him really doing well these last 3 weeks. He's put together 3 really good games, I thought. He said not getting complacent has led to his good performances. And he's someone who I've talked about on Instant, who I really just enjoy interviewing, hearing from him. He's such a great leader in that cornerback room when the rest of the guys are so young. Marcellus Williams, Jason Johnson, Braylon Conley, DJ Harvey's an older guy, but it sounds like based on the conversations we've had, DeCarlos Nicholson has just done a really nice job of mentoring that group. There's a lot of freshman corners from that 2025 class too. So the fact that he has that mindset is important, and it doesn't look like he's getting complacent out there. The one thing he did change for the better against Northwestern, he wasn't talking as much because he got a penalty against Nebraska that ended up being costly, so he learned from that mistake. But he's just been so key. I remember at the beginning of the year, we talked to people, and the staff wasn't sure, like, we feel good about the depth of our cornerback room, but we don't know if we have a cornerback one. And Nicholson, he's not that classically trained cornerback one. He started out as a junior college quarterback, but he's emerging into that role, which they didn't have that. He's becoming that. That's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, he's a father. He's a veteran guy. Yeah. He's a leader on the team. Anything else from the guys before I ask about the matchup?
The last thing, Jade Abasiri said he's rewatching Game of Thrones. So if you're a Game of Thrones fan, that's what he's been doing with his spare time.
Yeah, he was really excited to sleep on Saturday. He's like, I can't remember the last time I got to sleep on a Saturday. Okay, the matchup, USC, number 7 scoring offense, Iowa, number 4 scoring defense. It's supposed to rain. When I did tunnel vision on Sunday, someone in the comments talked about the rain, and then Chris and I were like, well, we saw it for Thursday, but now it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. How could that possibly affect it?
It's a great question, and I don't think we'll know totally until we get to Saturday or at least the day before. The big screenshot that's making the rounds is everyone in LA has that weather app, and it says Saturday, 100% chance of rain, but LA's huge. And who knows exactly what it'll look like on top of the Coliseum. But I do expect it to rain at some point in this game. And I don't think that will limit USC's passing attack too much, but it does have an effect. If this game was 70 degrees and sunny, I think USC would have a better chance than with it being rainy. But I don't think that by any means that means they're going to lose. It helps Iowa, I think. But, hey, they got to deal with the rain as well. So that's a unique wrinkle that I'm sure we'll talk more about tomorrow on tunnel vision, and we'll see on Saturday. But if it's just a normal rainstorm and you can still pass through it, I think USC will have a good shot. But that Iowa running game, I think they're rooting for some rain, so we'll just have to see on that.
Yeah, this isn't a weather report, but I would imagine if it is raining, it might affect the crowd a bit. Today was talking about the crowd environment. Yes, you want to have that support when you're at home, but ultimately you can't rely on that to win the game.
No, but it helps. So that is huge, and I do think because USC has a chance to make the playoff, even if it is a little rainy, I anticipate a good crowd. The fact that it's an earlier game and the weather, maybe it's not like a tremendous one, but I think it certainly could be. So I don't want to make any prediction on that because who knows what the weather will even look like. But I think, you don't want to rely on the home crowd to win, but it helps. And we've seen USC have some issues on the road at times. It's hard to win on the road, and Iowa lost last year at UCLA. They weren't a very good team a year ago, the Bruins. So there's precedent for Iowa coming west and having a hard time. And we know UCLA doesn't have a great home field advantage. USC's is much better, so maybe that'll play into this one too. Yeah,
well, USC with the extra day of rest after the Friday game. Friday win against Northwestern. Iowa, 12:30 kickoff in the Coliseum again. Anything else, Connor?
I don't think so. We'll see you Saturday. Stay dry. If they win this, that's up a monumental game against Oregon, but what have they been saying all week? One game at a time.
One game at a time. I'm Riley Sager. He's Connor Morrissette. Thanks again.